The alien nurse glared at me, so I blew her a kiss. Evan slowly opened his eyes. The light above him was harsh, almost too bright. His body ached and he could barely move his left arm. Around him, the room was strange. The walls were smooth and curved, glowing faintly with blue light. Strange machines beeped quietly, and soft humming filled the air. He tried to remember what had happened, but everything was blurry. One moment he had been piloting his small shuttle near the border of alien space, and the next he was falling, his ship hit by a sudden burst of energy. A figure stepped into his view. She was tall, slender, and unlike any human. Her skin shimmered with a pale green tone, and her eyes were large, golden, and unblinking. Her uniform was sharp and white, almost like a doctor's, but it had patterns Evan did not understand. She looked at him carefully, her lips pressed tight. Her gaze was sharp, cold, and full of suspicion. "Who are you?" she asked in a voice that sounded musical but hard, almost like it had steel hidden inside. Evan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. I'm Evan," he managed to say, his voice weak. The alien nurse stepped closer, tilting her head slightly. "Evan, you are human," she said. There was a strange emphasis on the word human, as if it were a warning. "Why are you here?" Evan blinked. My ship, I crashed. I need help." His lips were dry, and he tried to sit up. A sharp pain ran through his side, making him groan. The nurse immediately placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. Her touch was cool, firm, and careful. "Do not move," she said. "Your injuries are severe. You must lie still." Her voice left no room for argument. She studied him for a moment, then gestured for a small device to float near her. The device emitted a soft light, scanning his body. Evan watched it with awe. He had seen medical tools before, but nothing like this. "You will survive," she said finally. "Your body is strong but reckless. Humans are fragile in many ways, yet stubborn." She shook her head slightly, and for a moment Evan thought he saw a flicker of emotion cross her face, maybe curiosity or disbelief. Evan tried to smile, though it hurt. "Fragile," he whispered. "I feel like I've been hit by a meteor." He coughed softly. "I guess stubborn too." The nurse glared at him. Her golden eyes were sharp, piercing. "You speak while injured. Do not waste breath on nonsense." Evan's lips curled into a small grin. He moved his hand slightly and blew a tiny kiss in her direction, more as a joke than anything serious. The gesture was simple, light, almost playful. He did not know why he did it. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was to test her. The alien nurse froze. Her eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she did not know how to respond. The gesture was strange. Humans did odd things, she had observed, but this was unusual even by their standards. "What is that?" she asked, her voice a mix of irritation and confusion. "It's a human thing," Evan said softly, wincing as the movement hurt his ribs. "It means hello, I guess, or maybe don't be mad at me." He tried to keep the smile, but pain shot through his side and his eyes watered. The nurse looked at him for several long moments. Other medical personnel in the room glanced at him, whispering softly among themselves. It was clear they had never seen a human behave like this before. Most humans were frightened, quiet, or angry when injured. But Evan was calm. Even weak and in pain, he could smile. Even to the alien who glared at him, he showed no fear. The nurse took a slow breath, clearly unsure. Then, almost reluctantly, she turned to the scanning device. "His vitals are unstable. He has internal injuries. He requires immediate treatment," she said. Her voice was sharp but now tinged with concern. Evan tried to sit up again just a little. I can help," he said, though he was unsure how. "I can help if you want." The nurse stared at him. "Help? You cannot even lift your arm without pain." "You are in no condition to help anyone." Evan shrugged, wincing at the movement. "I may not be strong, but I know something about survival. You might need me to understand human tactics or human resilience." He gave a weak chuckle. "Humans find ways even when we're broken." The nurse's gaze softened just slightly. She did not smile, she could not, but there was a flicker of something almost like respect. She leaned closer, her golden eyes locking onto his. Resilience. Humans are curious creatures. You do not act like the others I have treated. Most are fearful, most complain. I guess I'm not most humans, Evan said, trying to make his voice light. Or maybe I just don't like lying in a hospital bed feeling sorry for myself. His lips twitched in another faint smile, despite the pain. The nurse shook her head slowly as if trying to make sense of him. Curious indeed, very curious. She waved her hand and small robotic arms extended from the ceiling. They moved with precision, adjusting his position and checking his injuries. Evan tried not to flinch too much. The devices were efficient but cold. "Do you always smile while injured?" she asked quietly. "Not always," Evan admitted. "Just when someone stares at me like I'm a strange creature, I smile. Helps calm things down." The nurse's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes flicked around the room, watching her colleagues work. None of them spoke to Evan yet. He was an oddity, a human who did not fear them, who did not beg or scream. He was calm, almost irritatingly brave. The scanning device finished its work. Lights blinked softly and the nurse examined the results. "Your ribs are fractured. Internal bleeding is minor but must be treated. You will require surgery and then recovery. You will lie still." Evan nodded. "I understand." He tried to sound brave, though every movement hurt. "But will I be okay?" "You will survive," she said again. Her tone was firm, confident, but not unkind. "Humans have strong will. You are lucky your injuries were not worse." Evan looked around the room. He saw other alien patients, some weak, some unconscious. He felt a wave of sympathy. I hope they are okay too," he said softly. The nurse's gaze turned to the other patients. "You may not interfere. Stay in your bed and recover," she said sharply. But her voice softened slightly as she looked back at him. "You have unusual courage." Evan smiled faintly. "Courage? I was just scared and didn't want to show it. Guess it looks like courage." The nurse tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Strange. Humans, you act differently than expected. Most would scream, panic, or beg. You joke, you smile, you make gestures that confuse us." Evan shrugged again. "Maybe humans are better at surviving because we smile through the pain." He tried another weak grin and then, almost without thinking, he blew another small kiss toward her, more playful than serious. The nurse froze again. Her golden eyes narrowed and she looked around at the other staff. "He continues to be perplexing," she muttered. Evan chuckled softly, ignoring the pain in his ribs. "I'm not trying to perplex you. I like to lighten the mood, makes things easier." The nurse's lips pressed together. For a long moment she did not speak. She moved closer, checking his vitals manually this time. Her hands were gentle but precise. She was careful not to hurt him, though he could feel every touch. "You are unlike any human I have treated," she said quietly. "Perhaps there is more to your species than we understood." Evan's chest hurt from the effort, but he tried to smile again. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just stubborn." The nurse's golden eyes flicked toward him, and for a second her glare softened, almost like she was thinking deeply. "Stubborn humans may survive for that reason. Perhaps it is admirable." Evan felt a warmth in his chest, though he tried not to show it. The nurse had glared at him, yes, but now there was something else. Something like respect. Something that said, even in the strange alien world he had crashed into, a human could stand out. And for the first time since he woke up, Evan felt a little hope. Even in pain, even in a world so alien and cold, maybe humans could survive, and even charm them. He blew one last tiny kiss, more to himself than anyone else, and closed his eyes for a moment. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if he would survive the treatment, or if he could ever leave this alien medical bay alive. But he knew this. He had made an impression. The alien nurse watched him quietly. She said nothing more, but the way she kept her eyes on him told Evan something he could not yet understand. He had broken through her cold exterior with something as simple as a smile and a small, harmless kiss. For now, that was enough. Evan lay back on the soft, smooth bed. His ribs ached, his side throbbed, and his arm felt heavy and weak. Still, he could see everything happening around him. The alien nurse, Lyra, did not leave his side. She moved carefully, her golden eyes scanning every monitor, every machine, every movement of his body. Evan noticed her watching him more than necessary, as if trying to understand him, even though she would never admit it. The other aliens in the room were quiet. Some stared at him with curiosity. Others whispered to each other in a language Evan could not understand. He felt their eyes on him, but he tried to ignore them. He had learned long ago that humans could survive even when they were being watched. "I am checking your heart now," Lyra said, her voice sharp. Her hands moved with precision over the scanning device hovering near him. She did not touch him yet but guided the machine as it floated around. "Your pulse is high. You are in pain. Do not try to move." "I'm not moving," Evan said softly. "I promise. I just like to know what's happening." He tried to make his voice sound calm, even cheerful. Lyra's lips pressed together. "Curious humans. Even when injured, you want to know. Most species accept their weakness and remain still. You do not." Evan gave a faint smile. "I guess humans are stubborn that way." He coughed lightly, wincing at the pain, and realized just how fragile his body felt. Yet he refused to show fear. That had always been his way. If fear was visible, it gave power to whatever or whoever threatened him. Lyra studied him for a moment longer. "Your condition is stable, but your internal injuries require careful monitoring. You will remain under observation for now. Any attempt to leave this bed could make matters worse." "I understand," Evan said quietly. "I'll stay." But then he added lightly, "Though I must admit it's boring lying here doing nothing." Lyra's golden eyes narrowed as if she was measuring whether his words were bravery or foolishness. "Boredom is irrelevant. Survival is not." Evan chuckled softly. "I know. I know, but boredom is what makes people human." He tried another faint smile. "Even aliens, I guess, get bored sometimes." Lyra did not respond. She only adjusted the scanning device and watched his breathing. Evan noticed that, though she did not show it, her curiosity about him was growing. She glanced at the other medical staff, who were all quietly watching. None of them had spoken to him yet, but Lyra's attention seemed to make the others hold their words. Hours passed slowly. Evan closed his eyes for a while, trying to rest. Pain made sleep difficult, but he let himself relax a little. When he opened his eyes again, he noticed something different. Other aliens were coming closer to look at him. They whispered to each other, pointing in quiet excitement. Evan tilted his head slightly, trying to understand. Lyra noticed immediately and moved in front of him. Her hands hovered near the scanning device. "Do not touch him," she commanded the others. "He is under my care." Evan tried to sit up slightly. "I'm okay. Really, I can talk to them." "You will do nothing until I allow it," she said firmly. "Humans are unpredictable. I will not risk your health for curiosity." Evan shrugged, wincing at the movement, but he smiled again. "Fair enough. But I guess curiosity is also human. We cannot help ourselves." The nurse tilted her head and studied him. She had never met a human like this before. Most humans she had treated in history were fearful, begging, or angry when injured. But Evan, he was calm. He was aware of pain, yes, but he did not complain. He smiled. He joked. He even blew a small kiss at her earlier. She could not figure it out. A small alarm suddenly sounded in the room. Red lights blinked on the walls, and a low hum of urgency filled the air. Evan's eyes widened slightly, but he stayed still. He could see Lyra's expression change immediately. Her golden eyes became sharp, focused, and commanding. "Power fluctuation in Sector 7, she said, her voice clipped. "Other patients may be at risk. Assistants, check the systems. Humans, stay here." Evan shook his head slightly. "No, I can help. I know ways to deal with emergencies like this." Lyra stared at him. "You are injured, you cannot move." "I may be injured," he admitted, "but I am not useless. Let me do something. I cannot just lie here." He tried to sound calm, though pain ran through his side. "I want to help." Lyra studied him. She did not like the idea, but she could not ignore his determination. "Fine," she said finally. "You may observe. You may give instructions, but you will not physically intervene." Evan nodded, grateful for the small victory. "Understood," he said softly. For the next few hours, the medical station was busy. Machines hummed and alarms occasionally beeped. Lyra moved quickly, her eyes scanning monitors and patients. Evan watched everything, noticing patterns in the way she acted, the way the machines worked, and the way the assistants followed her commands. He whispered suggestions quietly, carefully, and to his surprise she listened. "You may be correct," she said quietly at one point, adjusting a device based on his suggestion. "Humans sometimes see solutions we overlook." Evan smiled faintly. "I try, that's all." By evening the situation calmed. The power fluctuation had been resolved and all patients were stable. Lyra returned to Evan's side, her expression unreadable. "You observed well," she said finally. "Your input was useful, unusual for a human." Evan chuckled softly, wincing at the pain again. "I told you humans can surprise you." The nurse's golden eyes flicked toward him, and for a moment something passed between them. A small understanding, maybe. Lyra had been cold and sharp when he arrived, judging humans as fragile and reckless. Now she saw a human who could remain calm, who could think clearly, who could act even in pain. "You are different," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Other humans, they are weak. They panic, they scream. You do not." Evan smiled faintly. "I guess I'm just lucky or stubborn." Lyra's lips pressed together. "Perhaps both," she said. Then she looked away, busying herself with checking his bandages and scanning devices. But Evan noticed that she stayed close. She had been keeping her distance earlier, but now she was near him, her presence constant, her attention focused. As the night went on, Evan noticed other subtle changes. Some of the alien assistants who had been hesitant around him now glanced at him with interest. Some even whispered to each other. They had never seen a human behave with such calm and bravery. And the nurse, the one who had glared at him when he first arrived, had started to watch him in a way that was no longer just suspicion. It was observation, study, maybe even a little admiration. Evan closed his eyes for a moment and thought about everything that had happened. He had been alone, injured, in a strange world filled with beings who did not trust humans. And yet, he had managed to survive the first day. He had even made an impression on the alien nurse who had glared at him, the one who seemed impossible to please. He let himself smile faintly. Maybe this was how humans survived for so long, through curiosity, through stubbornness, through small gestures that confused and charmed others. Even in pain, even when outnumbered, even when surrounded by beings who did not understand him, he could still make a difference. The nurse watched him quietly as he rested. She did not say anything, but she did not leave his side either. Her golden eyes followed his every small movement. She had seen the way he stayed calm, the way he observed, the way he spoke, the way he smiled despite pain. She could not deny it, this human was unusual. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the tiniest spark of something she had never expected: respect. Evan did not know it yet, but that small spark would grow. The nurse who had glared at him would become an ally. And the humans who others thought weak might surprise everyone in ways no one had imagined. For now, Evan closed his eyes again. He had survived the day. He had made an impression, and he had done it all while being himself, stubborn, curious, and a little playful. Tomorrow, he thought, would bring more challenges, but he would face them, because humans were survivors. And no alien glare, no strange machine, no pain could change that. Evan woke to a sudden alarm. The soft hum of the medical station had been replaced with flashing red lights and a sharp, urgent ringing. His ribs throbbed, but his eyes opened quickly. Something was wrong. He could feel it. Lyra appeared almost immediately. Her golden eyes were wide, her posture sharp and commanding. "Power failure in multiple sectors," she said in a clipped voice. "Emergency protocols have activated. Assistants check all systems. Humans stay here." "I can help," Evan said quickly, despite the pain. He tried to push himself up slightly, but a sharp ache in his ribs made him wince. "Even if I cannot move fast, I can give instructions. I know how to handle emergencies." Lyra's eyes narrowed, as if measuring his determination against her doubt. "You are injured," she said, her tone warning him. "You will not leave this bed." "I can observe. I can guide," Evan insisted. "You may need someone who thinks differently. That's why I'm here." The nurse studied him for a long moment. She did not like the idea, but she could not ignore the logic in his words. Finally, she nodded. "Fine. You will observe and advise only. Any physical action is forbidden." Evan nodded, wincing at the movement, but he felt a spark of energy. He was being trusted to contribute. That was better than lying helpless in bed. The lights flickered as Lyra moved quickly among the other injured patients. Her assistants floated by, adjusting machines, moving small robots and checking the emergency systems. Evan watched carefully. He noticed patterns in the way Lyra gave orders, the way the robots moved, and the way the assistants reacted. "Sector 7, he said softly, pointing to a monitor showing a part of the station. "The backup generator there may not be fully online. If the system fails, patients in that area will be in danger." Lyra glanced at the monitor. "You may be correct," she said, her voice low but sharp. She gestured, and a small team floated towards Sector 7 with repair tools. "You will direct from here," she said. Evan studied the monitors, giving instructions calmly. "Check the pressure levels first, then the oxygen flow. Make sure the backup generator engages before the main line completely shuts down. If it fails, reroute immediately." The assistants followed his instructions carefully, surprised by how clearly he understood the system. He had never worked with these machines before, but he understood logic and sequence, and his directions made sense to the aliens. Minutes passed like hours. Evan felt pain twisting through his side, but he ignored it. Every beep and flicker of a light was critical. He watched a small child, an alien patient, tremble as a machine next to her bed sparked. Evan pointed to a floating panel. "Increase the temperature slightly. Calm the environment, she will respond better." The nurse glanced at him, eyes sharp. "How do you know that?" "I've seen humans care for others in emergencies," he said softly. "Even when scared, you can calm them. Use your tools, adjust the environment, reassure them. It works for any species." Lyra's lips pressed together. She did not answer, but she observed closely as he continued giving advice. Slowly, she began to see the value of his calm presence. While she moved with precision and authority, Evan noticed small details she could not, small ways to reassure patients and keep systems from failing. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the station. A floating medical pod had toppled in Sector 5, spilling liquid over the floor. A patient moaned. Without thinking, Evan shouted, "Activate the stabilization field. Move the patient carefully and don't let the fluid contact open wounds." The assistants acted quickly, following his instructions. The nurse's golden eyes widened slightly, not with fear but with surprise. He was right. The patient was saved and the pod was stabilized without further injury. "You," Lyra muttered under her breath. "You are better than I expected." Evan gave a faint smile, ignoring the pain in his side. "I told you humans are stubborn. We don't panic. We find ways." Hours passed. The emergency continued, but Evan's calm and guidance helped the aliens stay organized. He suggested ways to move injured patients without hurting them, ways to reroute power when systems failed, and even ways to calm frightened children with gentle words and gestures. At one point, a floating robot carrying critical supplies malfunctioned. It began spinning in the air, threatening to hit a patient. Evan quickly pointed to a control panel. Override the motor functions manually. Slow it before it hits anyone. Lyra's hands moved on the control interface, her movements precise. The robot slowed and the supplies were delivered safely. The assistants whispered among themselves, impressed. By nightfall, the worst of the power failure had been handled. The patients were safe, systems were back online, and the emergency lights dimmed. Lyra stood beside Evan, her posture tense but controlled. "You," she said finally, her voice quieter than usual. "You contributed more than I expected. Humans, you may survive even in situations I thought impossible." Evan smiled faintly, though the pain made his lips twitch. "Sometimes it's just about staying calm and thinking clearly. Anyone can survive if they do that." Lyra tilted her head. "Most humans panic, most cannot endure this calmly. You are unusual." "I guess," Evan said softly. "Or maybe I just don't want to die in a place I don't understand." He gave a weak chuckle. "And I don't like feeling useless." The nurse's lips pressed together. "Curiosity and stubbornness. Perhaps that is the human way." She studied him for a long moment. "You have something many humans lack: control, calm, courage." Evan tried to hide a smile. "Maybe it's just instinct, or maybe humans are stronger than they seem." Lyra did not respond immediately. She adjusted the monitors and checked his vitals carefully. But Evan noticed something in her eyes. She no longer glared at him with distrust. Instead, she observed him with a quiet curiosity, a subtle acknowledgement of his courage and usefulness. The other assistants began to treat him differently as well. They whispered among themselves, glanced at him with respect, and followed his guidance more willingly. Evan realized that even small acts of courage and calm could change the way others perceived him. As the station returned to normal, Lyra moved closer to him. Her golden eyes were sharp but no longer cold. "You survived today because you were different," she said. "Most humans would have faltered, most would have made mistakes. You did not." Evan looked at her, wincing as he moved slightly. "I did not do it alone," he said. "You acted with precision and your assistants followed orders well. We all survived together." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line as if considering his words. "Perhaps your species has value beyond what I imagined," she said softly. "You are not only resilient but also intelligent under pressure." Evan tried to smile again, though it hurt. "Thanks, I appreciate that, but you're the reason the patients were safe. You led the station." Lyra tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You humans are strange creatures," she muttered. "Weak yet strong, fearful yet brave, small yet capable of great influence. You surprise us." Evan closed his eyes for a moment. He had survived the day. He had helped others. And he had made the alien nurse see him differently, not as a weak human, but as someone capable, useful, and brave. As the lights returned to normal, the nurse continued her work, but she stayed close. Her golden eyes watched him carefully, but now there was respect mixed with her curiosity. She did not yet trust humans fully, but she had learned that one human, at least, could surprise her. Evan let himself rest for a while. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but he knew he could face them. He had seen the difference a calm mind, courage, and small acts of guidance could make. Even in pain, even in an alien world, humans could survive and even lead. He thought about the kiss he had blown earlier, small and playful, but somehow it had marked the beginning of understanding between them. The nurse had glared at him first, yes, but now, after hours of crisis, she had seen him differently. Humans, Evan realized, had a way of making an impact, even in worlds that were not theirs. And he was just one human in a station full of aliens, yet he had made a difference. That thought made him smile faintly, despite the pain. The nurse watched him quietly. She did not speak, but her golden eyes lingered longer than before. Something had changed in her perception. The human she had glared at now carried himself with quiet authority and courage. She could not ignore it. Evan closed his eyes again. He could feel the ache in his ribs, but he also felt something stronger, hope. He had faced the first real test in this alien station, and he had survived. He had guided, helped, and stayed calm. He had shown them what humans were capable of. And that was only the beginning. The morning light was dim in the medical bay, but the soft blue glow of the walls gave everything a quiet shine. Evan's body ached. His ribs still throbbed, his arm felt heavy, and every movement brought a sharp stab of pain. But despite everything, he felt awake, alert, ready. Something in the air made him uneasy. Lyra stood at the edge of the room, her golden eyes scanning the monitors. She did not speak, but Evan could feel her tension. Something was wrong. Before he could ask, the alarm screamed again. This time it was louder, more urgent. Red lights flashed across the room, and a deep hum of machinery filled the air. A sudden message appeared on the central display. Hostile drones detected outside the station. Evan's heart raced, but he kept calm. He had faced danger before, and he knew panic would do no good. "We need a plan," he said quietly to Lyra. "Where are the drones coming from? How many?" "They are attacking the outer perimeter," Lyra said sharply. "We estimate 15 units armed with energy disruptors. They are fast and precise. Our shields can hold for now, but if they breach the outer layer, the station will be in danger." Evan's eyes narrowed. "Then we need to defend the outer perimeter. I can help direct the guards. Even if I cannot fight, I can tell them the best positions, how to move, how to use their weapons effectively." Lyra studied him closely. "You are injured. You cannot physically fight. You may only give instructions." "I understand," Evan said, "but I can help them survive." "That's enough for me," she gave a sharp nod. "Very well, assistants, bring up the tactical maps. Human, observe and advise." Evan moved slightly, wincing at the pain, but he leaned over the display. The tactical map showed the station, its outer walls, the perimeter defenses, and the incoming drones. Evan studied the positions carefully. He had experience in strategy, even in situations he had never faced before. "Move the first defense line closer to the east gate," he said, pointing at the map. "The drones will try to exploit any weak spot. Keep the barriers aligned and use the automated turrets to slow them down." The assistants worked quickly, following his advice. Lyra observed quietly, her eyes sharp. She did not interrupt, but she noted how calmly he spoke, how clearly he thought. His instructions were precise and they made sense. Minutes later, the first drones appeared on the monitors. They were fast, small, and aggressive. The station's turrets fired automatically, slowing them slightly, but the drones adapted quickly. Evan watched carefully. "Redirect the second turret to the northern approach," he said softly. "The drones are focusing there. Use the energy dampeners to slow their engines. It will give the guards time to respond." Lyra followed his instructions, and the assistants implemented the changes. The drones slowed, their movement interrupted, giving the guards a chance to target them more effectively. Evan's calm voice guided them, his knowledge of tactics helping where machines and instinct alone might fail. As the drones drew closer, some guards began to panic. They were skilled, but the speed and precision of the drones were overwhelming. Evan saw the fear in their movements and spoke quickly. "Stay calm. Focus on one drone at a time. Don't panic. Use cover and fire only when you have a clear shot. Timing is everything." The guards listened, and their movements became more controlled. The drones were still dangerous, but Evan's advice kept the situation from turning into chaos. Suddenly, a drone breached the outer barrier. It fired a pulse that damaged part of the wall. Evan winced. "Repair the breach immediately," he shouted. "And move the defensive line back slightly. Don't let them get past the perimeter." Lyra's hands moved quickly, adjusting shields and rerouting power. You are helping us more than I expected," she muttered under her breath. Evan nodded, ignoring the pain. "I'm just thinking clearly. That's all humans can do when things get bad. Panic helps no one." The battle continued for hours. Evan guided the guards, advised Lyra, and even suggested ways to evacuate vulnerable patients from the outer sections of the station. He spoke calmly, despite the constant noise, the flashing lights, and the danger surrounding them. At one point, a guard near the east gate was trapped under debris from a failed turret. Without hesitation, Evan pointed to a control panel. Use the mechanical arms. Lift him slowly, don't rush, and keep the barriers active while you do it. Lyra moved quickly, her hands precise. The guard was freed without injury, and the turret realigned to continue the fight. The other guards whispered among themselves, impressed by the humans' calm and clear thinking. Hours passed. More drones arrived, faster and more aggressive. But Evan stayed focused. He guided, advised, and reassured the guards and assistants. Even the frightened patients could sense his calm energy, and some stopped crying, watching him move with authority despite his injuries. Finally, the last drone approached the main gate. It was larger than the others, armed with heavy disruptors. The station's shields began to falter. Evan studied the map quickly. Lyra, we need a focused energy burst. Concentrate power from the auxiliary generators into the main shield. Fire the turrets only when they are aligned. Timing is critical. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Do it. Evan guided her hands, giving precise instructions as she channeled energy. The shield glowed brightly, and the last drone hit it. Sparks flew, and the drone was destroyed before it could breach the wall. A collective cheer rose from the guards and assistants. They had survived. The station was safe, at least for now. Evan sank back slightly on his bed, exhausted. Pain twisted through his side, but a smile spread across his face. Lyra stood beside him, her golden eyes studying him closely. You, humans, are not what I expected, she said quietly. You are strong, brave, intelligent under pressure. You saved many lives today. Evan shook his head slightly. I didn't do it alone. You and your team did everything perfectly. I just helped guide where I could. She tilted her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. Even so, your calm and your advice, it made a difference. Most humans would panic. Most would have made mistakes. You did not. Evan gave a faint smile, wincing at the pain in his ribs. I guess I'm stubborn, he said lightly. And humans sometimes survive because we refuse to give up, even when it hurts. Lyra's golden eyes softened slightly. Curiosity, stubbornness, calm, perhaps that is the human way. You are unusual. Perhaps humans can teach us more than we realized. Evan chuckled softly. I hope so. I want to survive, of course, but I also want to help. That's why humans work together. Even in danger, even when everything seems lost, we find a way to help others. The nurse did not respond immediately. She adjusted monitors, checked his vitals, and ensured the station was fully secure, but her eyes kept returning to him. She had glared at him when he first arrived, cold and suspicious. Now she observed him with respect, even a small hint of admiration. Evan felt a small warmth in his chest. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, he had earned their trust. He had survived, helped others, and even influenced the alien nurse who had glared at him when he first arrived. Humans may survive even in worlds not our own, Lyra said softly. And perhaps you are proof that courage and calm are as valuable as strength. Evan smiled faintly, closing his eyes for a moment. I think humans have always survived because we care, even when it's dangerous. We think, we act, and we help each other. That's what matters. Lyra nodded, though her lips pressed into a thin line. Perhaps I underestimated your species. You are more capable than we believed. Evan opened his eyes again. Tomorrow there would be more challenges, perhaps more threats, but he was ready. He had shown courage, intelligence, and calm under pressure. He had earned respect. And he knew that humans, even alone and injured, could make a difference in worlds full of uncertainty and danger. For now, though, the station was safe. Patients were stable, guards were organized, and the hostile drones had been destroyed. Evan closed his eyes again, letting himself rest for a moment. Pain still twisted through his body, but he felt stronger in spirit. He had survived, guided, and influenced. He had made an impact. Lyra watched quietly, her golden eyes reflecting something new, understanding. She had seen a human act in ways she could not have predicted. He had faced danger with calm, guided others with intelligence, and shown courage even when injured. And that, she realized quietly, was something that would not be forgotten. The station was quiet now. The alarms had stopped, the red lights dimmed, and the hum of machinery returned to a steady, calm rhythm. The battle with the drones was over. The patients were safe, and the guards were alert but not panicked. For the first time in hours, Evan could breathe without tension twisting in his chest. His ribs still hurt, his arm was heavy, and each breath reminded him of the strain he had endured, but he felt a deep sense of relief. They had survived. They had all survived, and somehow he had played a part in it. Lyra walked toward him, her golden eyes scanning his face. For the first time since he arrived, she did not glare at him. Instead, there was a quiet acknowledgement in her gaze, something like respect mixed with curiosity. She had seen him through fear, chaos, and danger. She had watched him guide the station, help the guards, and stay calm despite the pain he could not hide. "You," she said quietly, her voice softer than usual. "Humans are capable of more than I expected. Even when injured, even when weak, you make a difference." Evan smiled faintly, wincing as he shifted slightly on the bed. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "You led the station, your assistants followed orders perfectly, and the guards acted with skill. I only helped where I could." Lyra tilted her head, considering his words. "Even so," she said, "your presence, your guidance, it changed the outcome. Many humans would have failed." "You did not," Evan chuckled softly. "I guess stubbornness has its use. Humans survive because we refuse to give up even when it hurts, and maybe we surprise others sometimes." She studied him quietly. "You are unusual. Most humans panic, complain, or argue when faced with danger. You act differently. You think, you plan, you remain calm. You are valuable." Evan's chest ached from more than just his injuries. He felt a warmth at her words, a recognition he had not expected from someone so stern and unyielding. He gave a weak smile. "Thanks, that means a lot." The assistants and guards who had watched quietly now spoke among themselves. Some nodded, some whispered compliments. They had seen how his calm and clear thinking had guided them through the attack. They had survived because of his advice, his courage, and his focus. One young alien assistant, who had been terrified during the drone attack, approached Evan. Her hands trembled slightly, but she spoke with respect. "Human, you helped us. You stayed calm. We thank you." Evan gave her a small smile. "You don't need to thank me. You all did your part. I only helped guide you. The credit is yours." Lyra watched the exchange quietly, her golden eyes softening. She had glared at him when he first arrived, suspicious and sharp. Now she saw a human who could influence others not by force, not by authority, but by courage, calm, and small acts of leadership. Evan shifted slightly, wincing at the pain. "I'm not as strong as I look," he admitted quietly. "But I know humans, we have ways to survive even when injured. We don't panic, we act." Lyra studied him for a long moment. "Your species may be more capable than we thought. I underestimated humans, but you proved me wrong." Evan's lips twitched into a faint grin. "Well, I guess humans are full of surprises." The nurse tilted her head as if studying him carefully. Then, almost quietly, she said, "You earn my respect." Evan's eyes widened slightly, surprised. "Your respect?" he repeated softly. "Yes," she said. "I misjudged you when you arrived. I thought humans were fragile, reckless, and weak. You are none of those things. You are strong in ways I did not expect." Evan gave a faint smile, the pain momentarily forgotten. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Lyra's golden eyes softened further. "Perhaps humans and aliens can learn from each other. You showed me that courage, intelligence, and calm can change outcomes, even in the worst situations." Evan nodded slowly. I think so too. I hope humans and your species can work together more. We can survive better that way, I think. The nurse remained silent for a moment, her eyes lingering on him. Then she moved slightly closer. You have a strange way of making others see your strength, she said softly. Even through small gestures, even with a smile. Evan's lips twitched. He remembered the small kiss he had blown at her when he first woke. It had been playful, harmless, almost foolish. But it had left an impression. He smiled faintly. I guess humans have small ways to connect, even when the situation is serious. Lyra did not respond immediately. Her golden eyes studied him for a long time. Then, almost imperceptibly, her lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile. Perhaps, humans are not only strong but clever in ways I cannot fully understand. Evan felt a small warmth in his chest. It was strange but good. After days of pain, fear, and chaos, he felt acknowledged, respected, even understood. And from someone like Lyra, that meant more than he could explain. The assistants moved quietly around the room, securing machines, checking patients, and returning to their normal tasks. The danger had passed, but the calm still lingered. Evan lay back on the bed, letting himself rest for a few moments. Pain still twisted in his ribs, but he felt lighter in spirit. He had survived, guided others, and made a difference. Lyra remained by his side. She had glared at him when he first arrived, cold and sharp. Now she watched him with something entirely different: respect, understanding, and perhaps the faintest hint of admiration. You, she said quietly after a long pause, you make humans worth noticing. Evan smiled faintly, feeling the weight of exhaustion but also a quiet joy. Thanks, that's all I ever try to do, survive and help others. The nurse's eyes lingered on him. For the first time there was no glare, no suspicion. Only observation, quiet acknowledgement, and respect. She had seen his courage, his intelligence, his calm, and his small gestures of humanity. You, she said finally, her voice soft but firm, changed my opinion of your species. And perhaps you changed the outcome today more than anyone realized. Evan nodded, his ribs aching but his heart light. I just did what I could. I stayed calm, I guided, and I tried to help. That's all humans can do, and sometimes that's enough. Lyra's golden eyes softened. You are extraordinary. Evan gave a weak chuckle, wincing at the pain. Extraordinary? Maybe humans are just stubborn. Lyra's lips curved slightly into a more noticeable smile. Perhaps stubbornness and courage and small gestures are enough to survive, even in worlds like this. Evan closed his eyes for a moment, letting the pain fade into the background. He had survived the crash, the injuries, the emergency, and the attack. He had helped guide the aliens through danger. He had earned respect, even admiration, from the nurse who had glared at him when he first arrived. For the first time, he felt a deep sense of relief, not just because he had survived, but because he had made a difference. Because he had been seen, not as a fragile human, but as someone capable, brave, and worthy of respect. The nurse remained by his side, quiet but attentive. She did not need to glare, she did not need to speak harshly. Her presence alone was acknowledgement enough. She had watched him, learned from him, and now trusted him. Evan thought about everything that had happened. The crash, the injuries, the initial suspicion, the chaos, the danger, and finally, survival. It had been a long journey and he was still hurting, but he had learned something important. Humans were resilient, brave, and capable of more than even others realized. And in a strange, alien world, that could make all the difference. He opened his eyes and looked at Lyra. Her golden eyes met his, and for the first time there was no barrier between them. She no longer glared, she no longer questioned. She simply acknowledged him. Evan smiled faintly, letting the warmth of the moment settle in. "We survived," he said quietly. "Yes," Lyra said softly. "You helped us survive. You helped me see the strength in humans." Evan's lips twitched into a small, playful grin. He remembered the first kiss he had blown at her, the small gesture that had broken the tension between them. It seemed almost silly now, but somehow it had mattered. Lyra's eyes flicked briefly to his lips, and then she looked away, a small, quiet acknowledgement in her gaze. It was enough. Evan closed his eyes again, letting the exhaustion take over. Pain still lingered, but it was softer now. He had survived. He had helped. He had earned respect. And maybe, just maybe, he had made a friend in a world he had never expected. The station was safe. The patients were secure. The guards and assistants were calm. And Evan had faced the worst and come through it with courage, intelligence, and heart. And that, he realized quietly, was what it meant to be human.